March 6, 1945, 2:30 in the afternoon, Cologne, Germany. Lieutenant Wilhelm Bartelborth sat inside the steel hull of his Panther tank, watching the destroyed streets through his commander's periscope. Around him, the city burned. Cologne Cathedral towered above the rubble, its twin spires somehow still standing after 262 Allied bombing raids. Behind his position, the Hohenzollern Bridge lay in ruins, blown up by German sappers just hours earlier. There was no retreat across the Rhine. His tank from Panzer Brigade 106 Feldherrnhall would make it stand here, 360 feet from the cathedral doors. What none of them knew was that the next 30 seconds would produce the most famous tank duel in history, captured on film and broadcast to millions. More importantly, this moment would reveal a truth that shattered German confidence in their technological superiority. The Americans had arrived with something new, something the Wehrmacht intelligence had failed to predict. The transformation from German tank dominance to American armor parity would unfold in the time it takes to fire 3 shots. The psychological collapse had begun weeks earlier, though few Germans recognized it yet. Since the Normandy invasion 9 months ago, German tank crews had maintained their faith in Panther and Tiger superiority. They had destroyed Shermans by the hundreds, their 75mm KWK-42 guns punching through American armor at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The Sherman's 75mm gun often bounced off Panther frontal armor even at close range. In Normandy, a single Tiger had destroyed 25 Shermans before being disabled. These victories fed German confidence even as their nation crumbled. But something was changing on the Western Front. Starting in February 1945, American tank crews began reporting encounters with a new enemy, something that looked different, moved differently, fought differently. German intelligence dismissed these reports as misidentifications, perhaps captured German vehicles. The idea that America could develop a heavy tank to match German armor seemed impossible to minds shaped by years of propaganda about American industrial incompetence. The journey of that belief toward destruction began in the minds of American tank designers 3 years earlier, Fort Knox, Kentucky, summer 1942. The Armored Force Board met to review combat reports from North Africa. American tank crews fighting in M3 Lees and early Shermans were being slaughtered by German panzers. The reports contained a disturbing pattern. German tanks could kill American tanks at ranges where American guns couldn't penetrate German armor. This wasn't tactics or training. This was physics. American tanks were outgunned, out-armored, and increasingly obsolete. But bureaucratic inertia proved more powerful than battlefield reality. General Leslie McNair, commanding Army ground forces, opposed heavy tank development. He believed tank destroyers should handle enemy armor while Shermans supported infantry. His opposition would cost thousands of American lives. The Sherman would remain the primary American tank throughout most of the war, with predictable results. In Normandy, American tank crews called their vehicles Ronsons, after the cigarette lighter, because they lit up so quickly when hit. Others called them Tommy Cookers. The dark humor masked genuine terror. The breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. In September 1942, a T-23 medium tank prototype underwent testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground. Engineers mounted a 90mm anti-aircraft gun in its turret, creating what became the T-25. But McNair blocked production. The debate raged through 1943 and into 1944 as American tank crews died in inadequate Shermans. Finally, in January 1944, the Ordnance Department bypassed McNair by designating the new design as a medium tank rather than a heavy, calling it the T-26. This bureaucratic sleight of hand saved the program. The first T-26E3 tanks, later named Pershing, rolled off production lines in November 1944. They mounted a 90mm M3 gun, fired armor-piercing rounds at 2,800 feet per second, and carried frontal armor over 4 inches thick. Most critically, they could penetrate Panther frontal armor at 1,000 yards. For the first time since North Africa, American tank crews would fight on equal terms. 20 Pershings shipped to Europe in January 1945 for combat evaluation. The Army selected crews carefully, choosing experienced tankers from units with proven combat records. Sergeant Robert Early from Fountain, Minnesota, commanded one crew assigned to Easy Company, 3rd Armored Division. His gunner, Corporal Clarence Smoyer from Laheyton, Pennsylvania, had developed a reputation for deadly accuracy. Their loader, Private John DeRiggy from Scranton, had traded for a distinctive French tanker's helmet that made him recognizable. Technical Corporal William McVeigh drove, while Private Homer Davis operated the bow machine gun, always wearing his trademark knit tanker's hood. They had been fighting together since September 1944. The crew named their new tank Eagle 7 after the Philadelphia Eagles, using their vehicle designation E7. In late February 1945, they climbed into the Pershing for the first time. The tank felt different from their old Sherman. The interior was more spacious, the gun more massive, the armor thicker. The 90mm M3 gun dominated the turret, its breech mechanism more complex than the Sherman's 75. The armor plates felt reassuringly thick under their hands. But the biggest difference was psychological. For the first time, American tank crews didn't need to fear German armor. They could fight back. The Pershing's baptism by fire came on February 25, 1945, near the Ruhr River during Operation Lumberjack. The 3rd Armored Division was pushing toward the rail hub of Elsdorf, 30 miles west of Cologne. Eagle 7 moved cautiously through destroyed villages, alert for German armor. The crew's new Panthers and Tigers prowled these sectors. Every destroyed building could hide a tank. Every rubble pile could conceal an anti-tank gun. The tension was unbearable. Then contact. A German tank appeared ahead, partially hidden by debris. Smoyer identified it through his gun sight. Panther. The enemy tank hadn't seen them yet. Early gave the order to fire. Smoyer aimed carefully, adjusting for range and wind. He squeezed the trigger. The Pershing rocked backward from the 90mm gun's recoil. The armor-piercing round crossed the distance in under 2 seconds and struck the Panther's frontal armor. The penetrator punched through, something impossible with a Sherman. The German tank erupted in flames. The crew bailed out, their vehicle destroyed. Smoyer sat stunned, hardly believing what had just happened. They had just killed a Panther from the front at extended range. It was a revelation. The new tank actually worked. Word spread through American armored units. The new tank worked. The Pershing had proven itself in its first engagement, but the real test came 2 days later at Elsdorf. On February 27th, the Wehrmacht launched a counterattack with 4 Tigers and 2 Panzer Mark IVs. These were Germany's best remaining tanks, veteran crews in formidable machines. The Tigers alone outweighed Sherman's by 20 tons and mounted the feared 88mm gun. Sergeant Nicholas Mashlonik commanded Pershing No. 40, attached to Task Force Lovelady. When the German counterattack materialized, his tank moved forward to meet it. At 1,000 yards distance, while his Pershing was still moving, Mashlonik engaged a dug-in Tiger. He fired 4 armor-piercing rounds in rapid succession. All 4 struck home. The Tiger exploded, its ammunition cooking off in a spectacular fireball. Mashlonik immediately shifted fire to 3 other German armored vehicles withdrawing from Elsdorf. The Pershing's 90mm gun spoke again and again. Within minutes, multiple German tanks lay destroyed or disabled. The engagement demonstrated that the Pershing could not just match German armor, it could dominate it when properly handled. Shermans still outnumbered Pershing's hundreds to 1, but now at least some American crews could match German heavy armor. More importantly, the existence of even 20 Pershings forced German tank commanders to reconsider their tactics. That dark shape in the distance might not be a Sherman anymore. It might be something that could kill them. The psychological impact rippled through German armored units. Tank commanders who had grown confident destroying Shermans at long range now hesitated. The comfortable assumptions that had sustained them were crumbling. American tanks were no longer guaranteed kills. German intelligence struggled to understand what they were encountering. Reports from the front described American tanks with heavier guns and thicker armor. Interrogated prisoners mentioned a new tank type. But Wehrmacht analysts had no photographs, no technical specifications, no recognition training materials. The Pershing remained largely unknown to German forces even as it entered combat. This intelligence failure would prove fatal for many German tank crews who expected Shermans and encountered Pershings instead. By early March 1945, the Allied drive to the Rhine was unstoppable. General Courtney Hodges commanded First Army's push into Germany. The 3rd Armoured Division spearheaded the advance toward Cologne, Germany's 4th largest city. Before the war, 800,000 people had called Cologne home. Now the city lay in ruins, its population fled or dead. The cathedral dominated the devastated skyline, a Gothic monument that had somehow survived the bombs that destroyed everything around it. The battle for Cologne began on March 5th. The 3rd Armoured Division struck from the northwest while 9th Armoured Division cleared sections south of the city. 104th Infantry Division attacked from the west. German resistance was desperate but disorganized. The Wehrmacht was collapsing, its units scattered and under strength. Most soldiers wanted only to cross the Rhine and escape the American advance. But some chose to fight. Panzer Brigade 106 Feldherrnhalle had been formed in October 1944 from remnants of various destroyed units. By March 1945, the brigade existed largely on paper. Perhaps 24 tanks remained operational, scattered across Cologne. Their mission was impossible, to defend a ruined city against an overwhelming enemy. Most crews recognized the futility, but stayed at their posts anyway. Some fought for comrades, some for Germany, some simply because they had nowhere else to go. Lieutenant Wilhelm Bartelborth commanded one of these remaining tanks. An experienced officer who had been awarded the Honor Roll clasp of the Army for previous combat actions, Bartelborth refused to abandon Cologne when the order came to retreat. His Panther, Ausfahr, sat near the cathedral, positioned to ambush American tanks advancing toward the river. The cathedral itself may have influenced his decision. The Gothic structure represented German history and culture, a symbol that transcended the Nazi regime. To abandon it without a fight seemed unthinkable. The tactical situation facing Bartelborth was grim. His Panther sat at the intersection of several streets, all lined with rubble from Allied bombing. The destroyed buildings provided cover, but also limited visibility. He could see north up Marzellenstrasse and west down Komödienstrasse, but side streets remained hidden until vehicles entered his line of fire. The Hohenzollern Bridge lay demolished behind him, cutting off retreat. German forces on the east bank of the Rhine could only watch as Cologne fell. March 6th dawned cold and clear. American forces pushed deeper into Cologne, clearing streets block by block. The fighting was intense, with German snipers and Panzerfaust teams contesting every building. Young boys, some barely teenagers, tried to stop American tanks with handheld anti-tank weapons. Most died in the attempt. The Americans advanced methodically, using their tanks to blast holes in buildings so infantry could enter and clear them. By afternoon, they had reached the city center. Around 2 o'clock, 2 Sherman tanks from Fox Company, 3rd Armored Division, advanced down Komödienstrasse toward the cathedral. Lieutenant Kellner commanded the lead Sherman. His crew moved cautiously, watching for Panzerfaust teams in the rubble. They encountered a pile of debris blocking the street and stopped to call for a bulldozer tank to clear the obstruction. This pause put them directly in Bartelborth's line of fire. The Panther fired. The first 75mm armor-piercing round struck Kellner's Sherman just below the gun shield, penetrating the frontal armor. The impact was catastrophic. The shell killed driver Private First Class Julian Patrick and loader Technical Sergeant Curtis Spear instantly. It severed Kellner's left leg below the knee. Shrapnel wounded gunner Corporal John Gianluca. A second round followed immediately, striking within inches of the first hit. The incredible accuracy demonstrated the German gunner's skill. The Sherman began smoking immediately. Kellner struggled out of the commander's hatch, his severed leg trailing smoke. Behind him, Gianluca clambered out and fell from the turret, landing hard but alive. Kellner dropped onto the engine deck, unable to move further. Soldiers rushed to help, including Stars and Stripes reporter Sergeant Andy Rooney, who would later become famous as a television journalist. They carried Kellner to cover and applied a tourniquet, but the wound was too severe. He died within minutes. The second Sherman, seeing the lead tank hit, attempted to reverse, but the Panther fired again, striking its track and immobilizing it. The crew bailed out and escaped. 2 American tanks destroyed in seconds. 3 men dead. 300 yards away, Eagle 7 idled at an intersection. Early and his crew heard the explosions and saw smoke rising. The radio crackled with reports. A Panther tank near the Cathedral had just destroyed 2 Shermans. Easy Company was to advance and destroy it. This was exactly the mission the Pershing had been designed for. Signal Corps photographer Jim Bates heard the same radio traffic. He grabbed his 16mm camera and ran toward Early's tank. Bates had been filming the advance all day, documenting street fighting and house-to-house combat. He wanted footage of the Cathedral, the symbolic prize of Cologne's capture. Now he might get something even better, a tank duel. Early and Bates went forward on foot to scout the Panther's position. They dashed through rubble-strewn streets, ducking into the mezzanine level of the Deutsche Arbeitsfront building. From there they could see south down Marzellenstrasse into the Cathedral Square. The Panther sat at the intersection, its turret oriented west down Komödienstrasse, where it had just destroyed the Shermans. The tank's right side faced Marzellenstrasse, completely exposed. Early saw the tactical opportunity immediately. If Eagle 7 approached from Marzellenstrasse, they could hit the Panther from its unprotected side before the German crew could react. It should be an easy kill, a simple ambush from an unexpected direction. Bates set up his camera at a third-floor window with a clear view of both streets. He would capture whatever happened next. Early returned to Eagle 7 and explained the plan. They would advance north on Anden Dominikanen, turn right onto Marzellenstrasse, stop at the intersection, and fire one shot into the Panther's exposed side. Quick, simple, decisive. The crew understood. McVeigh, the driver, started the engine. Smoyer, the gunner, loaded an armor-piercing round. They began moving. But Bartelborth sensed something wrong. After destroying the 2 Shermans, he had expected more American tanks to appear from Komödienstrasse. None came. The silence felt ominous. His instincts, honed by years of combat, warned of danger from an unexpected direction. He ordered his driver to edge forward slightly and his gunner to traverse the turret right, covering the northern approach up Marzellenstrasse. The crew complied, confused, but trusting their commander's experience. In the Deutsche Arbeitsfront building, Bates watched through his viewfinder as the Panther's turret slowly rotated. The long 75mm gun swung toward Marzellenstrasse, toward the intersection where Eagle 7 would soon appear. Bates realized with horror that Bartelborth had anticipated the American flanking move. The ambush had become a duel. All he could do was roll film. Eagle 7 accelerated north on Anden Dominikanen. Inside the tank, the crew prepared for combat. Early stood in the commander's position behind Smoyer. De Riggy stood ready to load. Davis operated the bow machine gun. McVeigh focused on driving. They could not see the Panther yet, did not know its turret had rotated, did not realize they were driving into a gun barrel pointed directly at them. McVeigh turned right onto Marzellenstrasse. The Pershing's bow entered the intersection. Davis in the hull gunner position was first to see the Panther. His heart dropped. The German tank sat 10 meters away, its gun pointing straight at them. He screamed a warning. McVeigh reacted instantly. Instead of stopping as planned, he slammed the accelerator. The Pershing lurched forward into the middle of the intersection. Stopping would make them a stationary target. Better to keep moving, even though that made accurate shooting nearly impossible. Smoyer rotated the turret as fast as he could, trying to bring the 90mm gun to bear. Through his gun sight, he saw what Davis had seen. The Panther's gun tube filled his magnified sight picture, pointed directly at him. They were perfectly zeroed. In seconds, the German gunner would fire, and Eagle 7 would burn like those two Shermans. But inside the Panther, Bartlebourth stared at the American tank through his commander's periscope and hesitated. This was not a Sherman. The silhouette was wrong. The gun was too large. The turret shape was different. For a moment he wondered if this might be a German tank, perhaps one of the rumoured new Panzers his superiors spoke about. He had never seen a Pershing before. Very few German soldiers had. Recognition training materials did not exist for a tank that American intelligence tried to keep secret. Bartlebourth's daughter would later reveal in a German documentary that her father told the family he believed the tank entering the intersection was German. He expected a Sherman and did not immediately recognize the unfamiliar vehicle as American. For critical seconds he held fire, waiting to confirm identification. Those seconds decided everything. Smoyer had no time for careful aim. The Pershing was still moving. His gun sight was not perfectly aligned. Normally gunners stopped before firing, stabilizing the gun for accuracy. But there was no time. The German tank was right there, its gun pointed at him. He squeezed the trigger. The 90mm M3 gun erupted with a thunderous crack. The recoil rocked the entire 35-ton tank. Orange flame flashed from the muzzle. The armour, piercing round, weighing 40 pounds and travelling at 2,800 feet per second, crossed the 110-metre distance in a fraction of a second. It struck the Panther's right side just below the turret ring. The tungsten carbide penetrator punched through the Panther's 80mm side armour as if it were cardboard. The shell entered the crew compartment, its explosive filler detonating inside the tank. Shrapnel tore through the interior. The engine compartment immediately caught fire. Flames appeared within seconds of impact. Bartlebourth reacted immediately. He threw open his commander's hatch and leaped from the tank, landing on the far side away from the Pershing. 3 other crew members followed him out, one with clothing aflame. They had to escape before ammunition began cooking off. 30 seconds earlier they had been confident German tank veterans. Now they fled for their lives from a tank they hadn't recognized, destroyed by a gun they didn't know existed. But the gunner, positioned deeper in the turret, could not escape quickly enough. He struggled toward the commander's hatch as Smoyer fired his second shot. The gunner could be seen in Bates's film, desperately clawing his way out of the hatch. Then the second round struck. Smoyer had yelled for another armour, piercing round immediately after the first shot. De Riggy rammed it into the breach with practiced speed. The Pershing had stopped now, giving Smoyer a stable shooting platform. He aimed carefully and fired. The second round hit the turret ring, the junction between turret and hull. The impact killed the German gunner instantly. His body slipped back into the turret to be consumed by flames. Smoyer fired a third time. He wanted to ensure the Panther would not fire back, that no German would use his last breath to kill Americans. The third armour, piercing round, struck the hull, penetrating completely and exiting the far side. The Panther was now a raging inferno. Bright flames towered from the open hatches. The penetration holes glowed orange with internal fire. Ammunition began exploding inside, throwing sparks through the hatches. From first shot to last, 30 seconds had elapsed, perhaps less. The duel that would become history's most famous tank engagement was over almost before it began. Bates captured it all on film, 45 seconds of footage showing 3 impacts, German crew members fleeing, flames engulfing the Panther. The film was so clear that decades later historians could count individual frames and identify crew members escaping. Early radioed that the threat was eliminated. Medics ran forward to help the wounded Sherman crews. American infantry advanced past the burning Panther toward the Cathedral. Bates climbed down from the building and ran to Eagle 7, shouting at Early. He thought he had captured the entire engagement on film. He asked the crew to stand in their beak hatches so he could photograph them. That image would later become the cover of Adam Makos's book, Spearhead, documenting the 3rd Armored Division's war. The psychological impact of the duel rippled outward immediately. American tank crews who heard about it felt a surge of confidence. Finally, they had a tank that could fight Panthers on equal terms. The fear that had gripped Sherman crews since Normandy began to ease, at least for those who knew Pershings now fought alongside them. Tankers who had spent months watching friends burn alive in Shermans suddenly had hope. They began requesting transfers to Pershing crews. Officers reported improved morale among armoured units simply from knowing the new tanks existed. More importantly, the existence of even 20 Pershings meant American industry could produce heavy tanks when needed. The technological gap was closing. American ordnance officers accelerated plans to ship additional Pershings to Europe. Production was ramping up at both Fisher Tank Arsenal and Detroit Tank Arsenal. By war's end, over 300 Pershings would reach Europe, though most arrived too late to see combat. The initial 20 had proven the concept. America could match German armour technology and outproduce it by factors of 10. For German tank crews, news of the duel triggered exactly the opposite reaction. The Panther at Cologne Cathedral had been destroyed by a tank they didn't recognize, using a gun more powerful than anything they expected Americans to possess. Intelligence reports from the front now included descriptions of this new threat. American heavy tank, 90mm gun, thick frontal armor, could penetrate Panthers from the front. The reports spread through Wehrmacht armored units like wildfire. German tank commanders held emergency briefings. They studied what little intelligence existed about the Pershing. The silhouette drawings were crude, based on distant observations and prisoner interrogations. Recognition, training was hastily improvised. Tank crews were warned that not all American tanks were Shermans anymore. Some could fight back. Some could kill Panthers and Tigers. The comfortable assumption of German technological superiority was officially dead. The psychological impact extended beyond tactical concerns. If America could field heavy tanks with 90mm guns, what else had they developed? German soldiers had been told for years that American industry was inferior, that Americans lacked the engineering skill to match German weapons. The Pershing proved that narrative was a lie. German officers who understood the implications realized the war was truly lost. America possessed both overwhelming industrial capacity and technological sophistication. Germany could no longer compete on either front. The Panther burned through the night and into the next day. Its hulk remained at the intersection for days afterward, a smoking monument to the limits of German armor. American soldiers posed for photographs next to it. The images show the 3 penetration holes clearly, testament to the Pershing's firepower. One hole sits just below the gun shield where Smoyer's first shot struck. The other 2 penetrations mark the turret ring and hull. The duel's fame grew rapidly. Bates' film made it into newsreels that played in American theaters within weeks. Smoyer's sister saw it in her local cinema, recognized her brother in the tank, and asked the theater to play it again the next day so her parents could watch. The footage showed American moviegoers that their soldiers now fought with tanks that could defeat German armor. After years of hearing about Sherman inadequacy, this came as a profound relief. But Smoyer received no immediate recognition for his shooting skill. A few days after the battle, military police caught him giving bubblegum to German children, a violation of non-fraternization orders. His pending Bronze Star recommendation was withdrawn as punishment. While Early and Bates both received Bronze Stars for their actions at Cologne, Smoyer and the other crew members got nothing. This injustice would stand for 74 years. The Pershing's combat record after Cologne demonstrated the tank's capabilities against Germany's best armor. In the final 2 months of war, the 20 initial Pershings in Europe engaged numerous German tanks in combat across the collapsing Western Front. The encounters validated everything the designers had promised. The 90mm gun could penetrate Tiger and Panther frontal armor at combat ranges. The armor could withstand hits from German 88mm guns at most engagement distances. The tank's mobility, while not as nimble as the Sherman, proved adequate for the fluid battles of Germany's final collapse. One Pershing near Elsdorf destroyed 4 German tanks, including a Tiger, in a single engagement on February 27th. Another Pershing fought and destroyed a rarely seen Nashorn tank destroyer near Cologne. At the Battle of Remagen on March 7th, 4 Pershings from the 9th Armoured Division provided critical fire support during the capture of the Ludendorff Bridge, the first intact crossing of the Rhine. Their heavy guns suppressed German defences while engineers secured the span before demolition charges could be detonated. Panthers and Tigers that had terrorized Sherman crews for 2 years learned to respect the new American heavy tank. German tank commanders who spotted Pershings no longer advanced confidently. They maneuvered cautiously, seeking advantageous positions, knowing they faced an opponent who could kill them as easily as they had killed Shermans. The technological balance had shifted, though too late to affect the war's outcome. Germany's armoured forces were already broken, their fuel exhausted, their replacement tanks and crews non-existent. The Pershing arrived just in time to witness the end. But the Cologne duel's significance extended beyond tactical success and individual courage. It represented a fundamental shift in American military-industrial capability. For the first time, America had designed and fielded a heavy tank specifically to match German armor in direct combat. The bureaucratic obstacles that delayed the Pershing cost American lives, thousands of tank crew members who died in inadequate Shermans, while the Pershing sat delayed by administrative inertia. But once the decision was made and political obstacles removed, American industry delivered with impressive speed. Production of Pershings accelerated dramatically after the Cologne duel validated the design. The February engagements at Elsdorf and Cologne provided real-world combat data that silenced remaining critics. By March 1945, both Fisher Tank Arsenal and Detroit Tank Arsenal were producing nearly 200 Pershings monthly. Over 2,000 would eventually be manufactured by year's end. The tank would go on to fight in Korea, where it again proved superior to enemy armor. Modified versions remained in American service into the 1950s, eventually evolving into the M46 Patton tank that equipped NATO forces during the early Cold War. German tank crews who survived the war remembered the Cologne duel as a turning point in their psychological experience of combat. Before Cologne, many maintained faith in German technological superiority even as their nation collapsed. After Cologne, that faith eroded. The Americans had closed the tank gap. If they could match Panthers with Pershings, what other capabilities had they developed? The comfortable myths of German invincibility crumbled under the weight of observed reality. Bartelborth survived the battle and was captured shortly after escaping his burning tank. He lived to age 93, dying in the 1990s. According to his daughter's testimony in the German documentary Cologne 1945, Nahaufnahmen, he spoke about the engagement to his family. His decision to hold fire because he did not recognize the Pershing haunted him. That moment of hesitation cost the lives of his crew members and destroyed his tank. But what else could he have done? American intelligence had successfully kept the Pershing secret. Recognition training did not exist. Bartelborth made a reasonable decision based on incomplete information. It simply proved fatal. The technical specifications told the story of how the balance had shifted. The Panther mounted a 75mm KWK-42 gun that could penetrate 6.9 inches of armor at 1,000 yards. The Pershing's 90mm M3 gun could penetrate 7.1 inches at the same range. The Panther's frontal armor measured 4 inches sloped at 55 degrees. The Pershing's frontal armor measured 4 inches at 46 degrees. In practical terms, the tanks could kill each other at typical combat ranges. Neither held overwhelming advantage. Success depended on crew skill, tactical position, and luck. But the broader implications reached beyond technical equality. American industry had demonstrated the ability to design, produce, and deploy heavy tanks when strategic necessity demanded it. The bureaucratic delays that kept the Pershing from combat until late war reflected poor decision-making, not industrial incapacity. Once authorized, American factories produced the complex vehicle in large numbers. This capacity terrified anyone who understood what it meant. America could match German technology and outproduce it by factors of 10 or more. The strategic implications were devastating for Germany. The human cost of the bureaucratic delays remained incalculable. How many American tank crews died in inadequate Shermans while the Pershing sat delayed by administrative inertia? Thousands, certainly. General McNair's insistence that tank destroyers should handle enemy armor while Sherman's supported infantry proved catastrophically wrong. Tank destroyers lacked armor protection and fought defensively. Sherman's lacked gun penetration against heavy German tanks. The result was slaughter. The Pershing arrived too late to save most of those crews. By March 7th, all of Cologne west of the Rhine was in American hands. The battle cost the 3rd Armored Division 100 casualties killed and wounded. German casualties were far higher, with thousands killed, wounded, or captured. The Hohenzollern Bridge remained destroyed, preventing American forces from immediately crossing the Rhine at Cologne. But further south at Remagen, 9th Armored Division captured the Ludendorff Bridge intact on March 7th, providing the crucial Rhine crossing. The war in Europe would end 2 months later. The crew of Eagle 7 continued fighting after Cologne. They crossed the Rhine south of the city and pushed deep into Germany, advancing through Marburg and Paderborn toward Dessau. The war ended for them in early May when German resistance collapsed. All 5 crew members survived the war, though they carried psychological scars. Tank warfare was literally hell on wheels. Men lived for weeks in cramped steel capsules, unwashed, exhausted, constantly threatened by Panzerfausts, mines, and enemy tanks. The stress broke many soldiers. Smoyer returned home to Pennsylvania after the war. He married Melba, the woman who had sent him homemade fudge during combat. They were married for 70 years before she died in 2017. Smoyer worked as supervisor at an industrial cement plant, rarely speaking about his wartime experiences. He turned off the television when war movies came on. He closed windows during 4th of July fireworks. The memories were too painful. In 2013, author Adam Makos brought Smoyer back to Cologne for the first time since the war. The trip was part research for Makos's book Spearhead, part therapeutic journey for Smoyer. The veteran walked the streets where he had fought, stood at the intersection where the duel occurred, visited Cologne Cathedral. The experience was overwhelming. Decades of suppressed memories flooded back. But the trip also provided unexpected healing. Smoyer met Gustav Schäfer, a German tank crewman who had fought in a Panzer Mark IV near the cathedral. The two veterans, former enemies, became friends. They discussed their shared experiences, the horror and futility of war, the lives destroyed on both sides. Both men also confronted their feelings about Katharina Esser, a young German woman killed in crossfire shortly before the Panther duel. Neither knew for certain who fired the shot that killed her, but both carried guilt. They visited her grave together and spoke about forgiveness. The publication of Spearhead in 2019 brought Smoyer's story to wide public attention. Makos documented not just the Cologne duel but the entire journey of Eagle 7's crew through the war. The book became a bestseller, introducing new generations to the sacrifices of armored warfare veterans. More importantly, it prompted someone to address the Bronze Star injustice from 1945. Makos launched a campaign to award Bronze Stars to Smoyer and the 3 other crew members who had received nothing after Cologne. He gathered eyewitness testimony, compiled documentation, and submitted the request through proper channels. The Army reviewed the evidence and agreed. On September 18, 2019, 74 years after the Cologne duel, the Army finally awarded Bronze Stars to Eagle 7's crew. The ceremony took place at the World War II Memorial in Washington. Clarence Smoyer, age 95, and the last surviving crew member, received his medal in person. Private Homer Davis, Private John DeRiggi, and Technical Corporal William McVeigh received their medals posthumously, accepted by family members. Sergeant Robert Early, the tank commander, had previously received his Bronze Star and was honored posthumously at the ceremony. Hundreds attended, including World War II reenactors, historians, family members, and veterans. Smoyer's speech at the ceremony captured the essence of what the recognition meant. He dedicated the award to all the young men who died in the war, especially those who fought in tanks. He spoke about honor, sacrifice, and remembrance. He did not glorify war or claim heroism. Instead, he bore witness to the cost of conflict and the necessity of remembering those who paid that cost. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. The Cologne Cathedral duel entered military history as one of the most documented tank engagements of World War II. The Bates film provided unique visual evidence of an armored duel from start to finish. Historians could analyze the footage frame by frame, studying tactics, crew behavior, weapon effects, and timing. The engagement became a case study taught in military schools, demonstrating the importance of surprise, crew training, and weapon technology. But the duel's significance extended beyond tactical lessons. It represented the moment when German tank crew confidence in their technological superiority began its final collapse. For years, they had dominated Allied armor with Panthers and Tigers. Suddenly, they faced American tanks that could kill Panthers from the front. The psychological impact was devastating. If Americans could match German heavy tanks, what else could they produce? The comfortable myths of German invincibility died in that intersection near Cologne Cathedral. The statistics validated what the duel demonstrated. By April 1945, American forces had crossed the Rhine in strength. The Wehrmacht collapsed rapidly under overwhelming material superiority. German tank units that had terrorized Allied armor in Normandy were destroyed or scattered. Fuel shortages immobilized many remaining tanks. Ammunition ran out. Replacement parts vanished. Even the vaunted Tigers and Panthers were reduced to stationary pillboxes, unable to maneuver or retreat. American industry had produced the tools of victory in such quantities that German resistance became futile. The Pershing program's troubled development history demonstrated both American industrial capacity and bureaucratic dysfunction. When finally authorized, American factories produced the complex tank efficiently. But the delays caused by inter-service politics and doctrinal rigidity cost lives unnecessarily. The lessons learned influenced post-war American armor development. Never again would bureaucratic obstacles delay needed equipment while soldiers died in inadequate vehicles. The memory of Sherman crews burned alive in their tanks ensured that future generations would prioritize survivability and firepower. Eagle 7 itself survived the war and was eventually shipped back to the United States. The tank that fought at Cologne Cathedral ended its days as a museum piece, preserved as a monument to the crew who made it famous. Visitors can still see the vehicle today, its steel hull scarred by combat, its gun still pointed as if ready to fire. The tank represents not just one crew's courage, but America's industrial transformation during World War II. The crew members' later lives reflected the quiet heroism of their generation. They returned home, found jobs, raised families, rarely spoke about their wartime experiences. Smoyer worked his entire career in industrial management. DeRiggy returned to Pennsylvania. Davis went back to Kentucky. McVeigh settled in Michigan. Early lived in Minnesota. They were ordinary men who had done extraordinary things when their nation needed them. Their reward was simply to survive and build normal lives after years of hell. The Cologne duel's fame endured because it captured in miniature the larger story of American victory in World War II. Overwhelming industrial capacity, technological innovation when needed, and the courage of ordinary soldiers combined to defeat enemies who believed themselves superior. The duel showed that American tankers could match German veterans when given adequate equipment. The Pershing provided that equipment too late for most of the war, but its arrival demonstrated American capacity to compete in any technological field when strategic necessity demanded. The burned-out Panther at Cologne Cathedral became a symbol photographed thousands of times. American soldiers posed next to it. German civilians walked past it in shock. The Hulk sat at the intersection for days, its steel still glowing with residual heat, ammunition still occasionally exploding inside. Eventually, salvage crews towed it away, but images of the destroyed tank spread worldwide. The photographs showed what American industry had finally produced, a tank that could kill Panthers. The transformation from German tank dominance to American parity happened remarkably quickly once the decision was made to proceed with heavy tank development. The Pershing went from concept to combat in less than 2 years, despite bureaucratic obstacles. American industry demonstrated the flexibility to design new weapons systems and produce them in quantity, while simultaneously manufacturing existing equipment in unprecedented volumes. This industrial capacity, more than any battlefield tactic, ensured Allied victory. The Cologne Cathedral itself survived the war with surprisingly limited damage. The Gothic structure had been struck by bombs 70 times but never collapsed. Its twin spires remained standing throughout 262 air raids, a symbol of endurance that inspired both Germans and Allies. American forces took care not to shell the cathedral during street fighting. Early later said he was careful not to hit it with rounds aimed at the Panther. The building represented cultural heritage that transcended the war's politics. Its preservation amid total destruction around it seemed almost miraculous. The human stories behind the duel remained largely unknown for decades. Smoyer rarely spoke about his experiences. Bartelborth returned to civilian life in Germany and avoided publicity. The other crew members on both sides simply wanted to forget. Only the film remained, playing occasionally in documentary programs but largely forgotten by new generations. The heroism and sacrifice embodied in that 30-second engagement faded from public consciousness. Makos's research changed that. By documenting the lives of participants, by traveling to Cologne to walk the battlefield, by interviewing survivors and family members, he reconstructed not just the tactical engagement but its human meaning. The book Spearhead told the full story, from crew training through combat to post-war life and reconciliation. Readers discovered that war's reality was far more complex and tragic than simplified narratives suggested. The recognition ceremony in 2019 provided closure for Smoyer and validation for the other crew members' families. The Bronze Stars acknowledged what had been obvious in 1945, that Eagle 7's crew performed with courage and skill under fire. The delay of 74 years made the recognition bittersweet. Most participants were dead, but Smoyer lived to receive his medal and speak about what it meant. His testimony ensured the next generation would remember. The Cologne Cathedral tank duel stands today as history's most documented armor engagement, a 30-second period captured on film that revealed fundamental truths about technological competition, industrial capacity, and human courage under fire. German tank crews who believed in their superiority learned that American industry could produce weapons to match anything Germany fielded. American tankers who feared German armor discovered they could fight back when given adequate equipment. Both sides paid for lessons that should have been learned earlier, in lives destroyed and futures never realized. The final truth revealed at Cologne was simple, but profound. Technological superiority means nothing if industrial capacity cannot sustain it. Germany produced excellent tanks, but could not produce enough to matter. America initially produced inadequate tanks, but then designed and manufactured superior ones in overwhelming numbers. The Pershing arrived late, but its arrival signaled that American industry had finally responded to the challenge. Future enemies would face not just superior numbers, but superior technology as well. The combination proved unstoppable. Smoyer died in 2022 at age 99, the last surviving member of Eagle 7's crew. He had lived long enough to see his story told, his sacrifice recognized, his friendship with former enemies celebrated. His quiet dignity in those final years exemplified his generation's character. They asked for no glory, expected no recognition, simply did their duty and came home. That they also happened to participate in history's most famous tank duel was almost incidental to who they were as men. The lesson of Cologne Cathedral resonates today. Victory in war requires not just courage but capacity, not just tactics but technology, not just determination but resources. The Pershing demonstrated that America possessed all these elements. The duel demonstrated that German veterans, despite skill and experience, could not overcome material disadvantage. The 30 seconds captured on film by Jim Bates showed the world that American power had reached maturity, capable of matching any enemy in any field of competition. That power, combined with Allied determination, ensured Germany's defeat and Europe's liberation. The price was measured in lives, including those of tank crews on both sides, who fought with skill and courage in a war that should never have happened.